Welcome to She's in the Weeds.
I'm Sam.
And I'm Hollis.
We're best friends exploring the intersection of pop culture and the female experience.
Be sure to follow us on socials and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode.
And if you love us, give us that 5-star review.
Nailed it?
I think it's fine.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to part 2 of Pop Culture Archives, The Disappearance of Lauren Spierer. If you haven't listened to part 1 from last week, go ahead and hop off and give that a listen first. Part 2 will cover the investigation by police and PIs hired by the family, the lawsuit filed by the Spieres against persons of interest, different accounts given by and about persons of interest, and tips and theories that have emerged over the years. This episode will also include the interview with our friend and eyewitness. We thought about dropping the interview in earlier when we were covering the events of the morning of June 3rd, but it felt more cohesive to give you the full story and then drop the interview in at the end. So you will be hearing the story in its entirety, then the interview, and then some final thoughts after a bit of reflection. So now at the start of the episode, we're picking up where we left off with Lauren's parents arriving in Bloomington and the media frenzy beginning to take hold. Celebrities are tweeting, find Lauren, Stephen Colbert, Kim Kardashian, Jim Irsay. The story...
I don't remember it being like that widespread.
Yes. The story is covered on the Today Show, Good Morning America, CBS Morning News, America's Most Wanted, you name it. This is a good time to mention that Lauren has what we refer to as missing white girl syndrome. This is defined as a media phenomenon where disappearances of young, conventionally attractive white women receive disproportionate news coverage and public concern compared to cases involving men, individuals of color, I'm sure anyone in the queer community, and lower socioeconomic backgrounds. So that's an important thing to note. The author, I was actually impressed. The author does talk about that a little bit in the book. People go missing all the time. Yeah. And no one missing person is any more important than anyone else. And unfortunately, a lot of these people that go missing don't get the coverage that they deserve. And he talks about a couple of people, I'm not going to go into it, you can read the book, that kind of went missing around the same time, so just putting that out there. Yeah. This story has all of those things.
Yeah.
Okay. So Shawn Cohen, the author, who is a journalist in New York, where Lauren's from, he's worked for different publications. I can't remember what publication he worked for at the time. He does have his own little kind of personal scandal that's sort of interesting, that adds a little bit of edge to the story. If you want to know about that, you can read the book. But he was a journalist in New York, and he's like, this story has legs, and everyone's like, yes, go. So he arrives in Bloomington, boots on the ground.
Right when soon after it happened.
Yeah, soon as the story broke and anyone knew anything about it, he was pretty much here. Gotcha. I think he got on a plane that day or the next day.
Yeah, I was just assuming in my mind for no reason that he discovered this story later and decided to write a book about it.
No, he was one of the first journalists
involved.
Yes, here. Wow. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yes. Okay. So he arrives in Bloomington and is searching for clues. And this is why the parents didn't really like him at the start. Because he's talking to people, he's getting interviews, and he's starting to unearth some of the more unsavory narratives, the drinking, the drugs. And so at first the parents were not having him.
Yeah.
But then over time, especially when, listen, I'm not a police officer. I don't know the interworkings of all of that. I think there's a pretty large consensus that this initial investigation was botched by Bloomington PD and Mike Dekoff, who's the chief of police at the time, and maybe still is. I have no idea. There's a lot of opinions about that. And I think especially kind of once the parents started to realize things were a dead end, and that's when they started to warm up to Shawn a little bit,
he's actually the only one figuring
he's doing
answers.
Some stuff. Yeah. Okay, so the persons of interest at this point had stopped talking and lawyered up. I mean, pretty much within days. Rosenbaum, who had spoken to police a couple of times, offered his phone and credit card records, had retained defense attorney Jim Voiles, who had famously defended Mike Tyson in his 1992 rape trial.
Oh, wow.
Corey Rossman hired local Bloomington local attorney Carl Saltzman, which I didn't remember this.
Oh, I went to his son went to our high school.
Yeah. He's just like a local figure. He was a prosecutor for a long time and then turned, private attorney. But anywho doodly. He was claiming Rossman had memory loss from the punch he sustained. And this I find interesting. So in an interview with press shortly after her disappearance, Saltzman states, and I watched this interview, he says, "When my client woke up the next morning, he had a considerably sore jaw, bruises on his face. I do not consider my client a suspect." Okay, watched him say that on an interview. However, friends and witnesses that saw him the next day reported that he had no visible markings or bruises on his face. And he was out with the friends at the pool and was helping them search for Lauren initially. So he was seen by lots of people, friends and witnesses, that said he had no visible markings or bruising on his face. Yeah. But his lawyer's out here telling everyone.
Yeah. Oh, he was so bruised. He couldn't possibly even be a suspect.
Right.
How does that rule him out as a suspect altogether? That seems a little far-fetched.
Well, the memory loss is what he's...
Yeah.
So,
still, that's a stretch.
I also want to point out that even though Corey was kind of going around with them initially, kind of searching for Lauren, he did not go to the police station with them. Okay?
Yeah.
Neither did Jay Rosenbaum. Jesse Wolf's parents flew to Bloomington to meet him and meet Lauren's parents for the first time. So even though they'd been dating for 3 years, their parents had never met.
Yeah.
Okay.
What a meeting. God.
Yeah, well, but just wait. They agreed at a breakfast meeting that Jesse should get a polygraph so he could be eliminated as a suspect. The next day, Lauren's parents received a text from Jesse's mother stating they were going to the airport. "We need to go," she said. "Jesse needs to leave." They stopped talking to police, declined all requests for interviews, and there was no way to make them talk.
Whoa.
And that's the boyfriend.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about kind of his trajectory that evening a little bit later, but yeah. Okay. So the security camera footage really became like the only factual evidence for the case at this point.
Yeah.
Everything else is just hearsay. Yeah. They were present along Lauren's route that night, except for the last known stop at the townhouses. They were able to track her movements from Smallwood to Sports, leaving Sports, going back to Smallwood, and then leaving again with Rossman. All of this solidifying an exact timeline leading up to her disappearance. Until we see Rossman hoisting her over the shoulder, and then that's it. At first, Smallwood refused to release the footage, and BPD had to get a warrant. And then, even after they got the warrant, an associate refused to unlock the door, and they had to break down the door with a battering ram.
Why would they refuse?
I don't know.
Weird.
That part I find so strange. Like, what do you mean? I guess I can understand being like, come back with a warrant, fine. But also, like, what are you afraid of?
Yeah, why would you not want to cooperate?
The other thing that makes me, and this is just like my mind going there, but it's like, what if she did make it back to Smallwood and then something happened?
Yeah. I mean, that's probably why they needed that footage, because there's many possibilities.
I mean, they got it, so I guess that's not what happened, but just like, and I put, this is strange to me. Is it possible she made it back to Smallwood after leaving Rosenbaum's and something nefarious happened, like after the fact? Why on earth would they not want to cooperate? Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, they got the footage in the end, so obviously there's nothing, but weird. It is strange, like, okay, but like, was that footage destroyed? Was that why they were like delaying them getting the footage? Like, is there footage that was,
oh yeah,
you know what I mean?
Like, tampered with.
Yeah.
That is just very odd. Like,
the
motive behind that.
Yeah. Okay, so Shawn is boots on the ground, speaking to anyone and everyone he can. Carl Saltzman, Rossman's attorney, claims his memory loss from the punch spans from 15 minutes prior to the punch and everything after, saying Rossman's first memory is of the next morning, waking up in his bed, and that it's corroborated by several people. How can anyone corroborate that? You'd have to be in his head to know what he remembered. What do you mean other people have corroborated that?
Corroborated the memory loss? Or
Yes.
him waking? Oh, yeah. I mean,
That
no
his
one
first
can.
memory is him waking up. You can't corroborate that.
No.
So stupid. Okay. This is when the overdose rumors begin and the initial rumblings that her friends had panicked and disposed of her body. Okay. That was sort of like the first theory to come up, is that she had overdosed, that they were maybe doing drugs, harder drugs that they didn't want people to know about, or that something had happened with her heart condition and she had had a heart attack or overdosed, and they panicked and were like, oh my God, we got to get rid of the body. Okay. Then 12 or 13 days in, the police release a photo of a white four-door truck that had been captured on security footage running a stop sign and circling the area in which Lauren was last known to be. Grainy footage showing what could have possibly been a body. It looked to be like a tarp or something in the bed of the truck. This is where the stranger theory was born. There's a lot of also mixed reports about the truck. So this is interesting. And we'll talk more about the overdose theory later. But this truck thing is like so unclear. I mean, there's so many different accounts. Okay. So the first one, and this is coming from the book, is that they tracked down the truck and owner. It turned out, and this is what he has written in the book, and I don't, he doesn't say necessarily where this information came from. It must have come from an investigator report, whatever. It turned out that the truck was not in the area at that time, and that the timestamp on the footage had been incorrect.
What?
I don't understand this. How is a timestamp wrong?
Correct, yeah.
What?
Timestamp from what? Which footage? Where was this footage coming from again?
The surveillance footage caught a white truck that was like circling the area around the time that she disappeared.
Yeah, that doesn't
That's,
make sense.
This is the report from the book. And that there appeared to be like a tarp, could possibly be a body in the bed of the truck. And then it says they tracked down the truck and owner. It turned out the truck was not in the area at the time and that the timestamp on the footage had been incorrect. I don't understand that. Okay. Now, according to a Crime Files episode titled Looking for Lauren Spierer, the police received 500 tips about the truck, which was seen at 4:14 and 4:24 and appeared to have a tarp in the bed.
500 tips?
Mm-hmm. The police were able to track it down, find the owner, and determined it belonged to a construction worker who was in the area picking up an employee, and that they were able to rule out the truck had anything to do with it. I put at 4:30.
Well, I mean, construction sites
To
they
start,
meet at
or
like 5
yeah, okay.
sometimes, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose. Okay. Also, there was a tip from a woman stating that a man had told her he was involved in Lauren's disappearance and that the same thing could happen to her if she spoke up about anything or messed with him in any way. He apparently owned a white truck. This lead was followed up on as well and was eventually ruled out as significant. Another strange thing is that there are some...
Ruled out as insignificant?
Yeah, you could say that either way.
Oh,
It was
okay.
ruled out as
ruled-
significant.
Ruled out as
Or it
significant.
could be
Or ruled
ruled out.
as insignificant.
Yeah,
Yes,
yes.
got it.
It was not significant.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, and this is what's strange, there's sort of like some of the reports say that it's a white four-door truck. And then he mentions in here that there were reports of a white Chevy Silverado. And I saw some of that online as well. And what's interesting about that is later on we'll talk about the Israel Keys theory. And Israel Keys drove a white Chevy Silverado. Now, that was his personal vehicle. And when he did his killings, he was typically renting cars. So it's just interesting how it's all these different reports. It's like, oh, it was a white four-door truck and it was ruled out because of this. Oh, no, it was actually ruled out because of this. Oh, actually, there was a tip from this woman about this, but that was also ruled out. But it also could have been a white Chevy Silverado, which belonged to this other serial killer, but it was his personal vehicle and he doesn't use his personal vehicle to kill people. Like, it's nuts.
That's a lot, yeah.
There's so much about this white truck. Then, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, And this is what I remembered. In 2016, the FBI raided a home in Martinsville off some kind of tip about Lauren Spierer and towed a white truck from that property.
Whoa.
But nothing ever came of that either.
Huh.
So lots going on with the white truck
Lots
theory.
of white trucks.
Yeah. Okay. So the truck theory has a lot of holes I put here. I feel like this could maybe still have legs. Why are there so many discrepancies?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And like 500 tips. I mean, I don't know what the average number
Yeah.
of tips is, but
I
that
don't either.
sounds like a lot. to
Yeah.
me.
Okay. So 10 weeks in, they finally searched the landfill in Terre Haute. Okay. So there's a lot of, speculation that if there was a panic moment with these boys, she died, there was an overdose, her heart condition, whatever, that if they were going to dispose of this body at 4:30 in the morning when civil twilight is maybe even less than an hour away at this point, we're talking an hour tops before they don't have the cover of darkness. They have no car other than this Alex Ferber who's supposedly asleep. So they're thinking, okay, they have to quickly dispose of this body. Probably it's going in a dumpster.
Ugh.
The dumpsters are picked up early in the morning. Who knows what time? They go to a transfer station, and then they're all taken out to the dump in Terre Haute, the landfill. The landfill was not searched until 10 weeks. And of course...
How do they search the landfill?
Well, they went out there with, I don't know, trucks and whatever. But they did. They searched a little bit of it. Not very much. I mean, I think they said it was like 20 acres of area where trash from Bloomington could have possibly been dumped. And I think they searched like a couple of acres.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of criticism to the Bloomington Police Department for not stopping the dumpsters from being taken.
Oh, yeah. Like there are precautionary measures they could have done to
Maybe. And again, I don't know because they said they can't technically report her missing for 24 hours. I don't know if they can start investigating before that. I don't know what all of that, procedure is. But that was a big criticism, I think, coming from the author and the parents is this was a 90-pound girl. They could have easily, and the dumpster thing was botched, essentially, kind of a thing. Okay. So 10 weeks in, they finally searched the landfill in Terre Haute. An employee at the landfill said they should have conducted the search the first day. And we will talk about why this was delayed later. The family flies home after this and starts looking into private investigators. So this is towards the end of the summer, school's starting to pick back up. They've been here all summer. They had these massive searches. People flew from all over the country to help search for her. The billboards have been up, the hotlines are open, and this is nearing the end of the summer. The trail's pretty much gone cold at this point. Yeah. The parents are frustrated. They go home to New York. They're not happy with the investigation at this point. There's a lot of bureaucracy going on about involvement from the state police and FBI. There were witnesses that were never contacted, so on and so forth. And it does say, he says in the book that the Bloomington Police Department was very resistant to any help from the state police and the FBI, who both offered to take over the case. Now, I don't understand that part either. At what point does the FBI just say, we're taking over?
Right,
don't they have
exactly.
federal jurisdiction?
Yeah, I don't
know how that stuff
about
works
either.
I don't either.
I mean, I know just from movies and stuff, you always hear there is contention.
This is my case.
Yeah, exactly that.
Yeah.
But you'd think
I'm in charge.
You'd think at some point they'd be listen, this is out of your depths.
Yeah.
Or,
I would think that the chain of command would be FBI all the way at the top, and they'd just be we're taking over. What do you mean?
Or maybe they didn't want to necessarily.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, they do get involved at some point because they're the ones who raided that house in Martinsville. So probably at a certain point when nothing has happened and she's still missing, then they get involved. Probably should have let them help from the start, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and just say they probably should have let them help from the start.
Yeah.
Okay. So the parents go home. They hire private investigators. And I felt like I feel like I've heard this name before. Enter Bo Dietl. Do you remember?
No.
Bo Dietl is the private investigator that Teresa and Louie hired.
Shut
on
up.
Jersey Housewives.
No
Yes.
way.
So he is a former detective, I believe. New York NYPD detective. And then,
Oh, wait. Was he on an episode? Do we meet
No,
Bo Dietl?
we don't meet him. Maybe.
I feel like
Louis talks about him a lot and has like the Bo Dietl file.
Yeah, I feel like we met him on an episode.
Maybe. It's possible.
Unless that was like just like their lawyer or something.
Yeah.
That could be confusing it, but
So anyway,
Bo Dietl, interesting.
it all comes back to Bravo, is all I have to say.
It does.
It really does. But yeah, so Bo Dietl, he was a former NYPD detective, and now he has like the biggest private investigator firm in New York City. And Mike Ciaravello was like the lead investigator on the case from Bo's team. So police chief Mike Dekoff and BPD made it clear they weren't going to be sharing information with Dietl's team of investigators and that they weren't interested in what they uncovered, which is another just one of these like...
Yeah, just an ego thing.
Yes.
Get over
just
yourselves.
take the information.
Right.
God forbid. Okay. Meanwhile, Jay Rosenbaum is in Bloomington because school has started back up. Okay?
Oh.
So all these guys fled essentially to home.
Yeah.
But now school has started back up. So we're going to get a little bit of like story.
And so have they come back to school?
Yes.
So that's brave.
Yes. So meanwhile, Jay Rosenbaum is in Bloomington being avoided by all of his friends. He's going around saying he has nothing to do with it, that Lauren left his apartment that night. Everyone's suspicious and no one wants to be near him. He's not allowed at sports. Jesse's threatened to beat him up if he comes around. He finally convinces a friend, Taylor, to come to his apartment so he can go over the night's events with her. He had a whole conspiracy.
Jay, this sounds like a bad idea. Right off the bat.
Right off the bat. Bad idea. Okay. So he had a whole conspiracy theory about a guy who had killed a few people in the area and that's who he thought it was. And I have a note here. Not sure who he was talking about at this point. Could be the first rumblings of the Israel Keys theory, which Rosenbaum talks about later and we'll talk about later. But it's not clear who he's talking about in this conversation about the guy who's killed some people. A strange new detail that popped up in the conversation with Taylor is that Rosenbaum said he had an iPod on the counter and Lauren was so messed up that she thought it was a phone and was trying to make calls with it. And that he said he thought she took the iPod with her because after she left, he couldn't find it. The friend Taylor asked if he'd told the police this because she had her own iPod and knew that you could track it. And I guess he responded to that and said, "Oh, I don't know. I told them, though." It's unclear whether this is the first mention of the iPod or if it's just the only mention of Lauren leaving with the iPod.
Okay.
So there's like discrepancies about the iPod. Okay, so there were discrepancies in the stories from Mike Beth and Jay Rosenbaum about the events taking place at their townhouses shortly before Lauren arrived back with Corey and after. And we talked about those, about how Beth stated that him and Rosenbaum had been hanging out before and Rosenbaum didn't remember that. He didn't say that, didn't remember that. Okay, Beth stated Rosenbaum had called David Ron to ask him to walk Lauren back to her apartment, and Rosenbaum stated Lauren had used his phone first to call her own to look for it, and then also place the calls to David Ron and Scott Schwartz. So that's a discrepancy. Mike is saying Jay called David and was like, "Hey, walk Lauren home." And Jay is saying that Lauren took his phone, called her own phone, which there doesn't seem to be a record of. They don't mention a phone call to her phone. And then called David Ron and Scott Schwartz. Also, and I guess maybe just because Scott Schwartz lives at Smallwood,
Yeah.
That makes sense, I guess, why they would call him. But anyway. Okay. Both men specifically mentioned that Lauren had both her key card to get into Smallwood and her fake ID, but that her other belongings were missing. Her phone, her shoes, and her keys that would unlock her apartment when the key card would only grant her access to the building. Jay Rosenbaum told police that he placed her key card and fake ID on his doorknob when she insisted on leaving so that she would not forget them. This struck them as odd since it was a round doorknob, and that he also should have known the key card alone would not get her into her apartment. Again, who knows with that. Rosenbaum told Jesse Wolf that he, not Lauren, was the one that had called David Ron and Scott Schwartz. So he's telling police, he's telling different stories. Okay, so these are the discrepancies in what went on with the boyfriend. Okay. All right. So according to the majority of his frat brothers, Jesse Wolf watched the NBA Finals game with a large group of them at a house near where Wolf lived. I think they were like right next door to each other, maybe the houses. After the game, Wolf returned home, staying up for a short time with one of his roommates, Zach Rifkin, discussing the game before going to bed somewhere between 1:30 and 3 a.m. His other roommate, Aaron Greenberg, told investigators that he and Wolf watched the game alone at their house and that Rifkin wasn't even present. When confronted with the discrepancies, Greenberg was apparently shocked that his frat brothers had told a different story. Investigators asked if they had rehearsed a story and perhaps Greenberg had gotten the details wrong, and he replied something like, "Oh, the night was a blur and I was drunk." Wolf told Cohen, the author, in a Facebook message that he had submitted to a polygraph. When asked about the results, he said something along the lines, "Well, what do you think the results were if I'm not a suspect or not arrested?" When school started up in August, Bloomington had clearly started to move on. Lauren's parents told the press that they had now met with Wolf, Beth, and Rosenbaum, although they still refused to submit to lie detector tests with the police department. And here I have not sure who conducted the lie detector test Wolf was talking about. I do think maybe it's his attorneys. I'm not sure.
It's weird to me that they even do those at all anymore.
No, I know. Corey Rossman refused to meet with the Spieers at all. He also never met with their investigators. Okay, this is an interesting detail. The private investigators had made an appointment for an interview with Wolf a few days before his graduation ceremony in December. But he left town the day before and drove back to New York, leaving behind personal belongings in his apartment, along with 6 months left on his lease with no arrangements made to pay it. He also skipped out on his graduation ceremony, didn't go. Amongst those belongings was an article titled "The Killing of Kristen," the story of a woman named Kristen Lardner who was brutally murdered by her abusive boyfriend in Boston in 1992. He had also written the title of a second article, "The Stalking of Kristen, The Law Made It Easy for My Daughter's Killer," on a piece of notebook paper. So, Rosenbaum's meeting with investigators. He's been the most cooperative over the years, but still hasn't been much. Okay, and this is just another discrepancy or different account. He claimed that he was actually with Rossman and Lauren at the bar. And then he also doubled down on his claim that he had watched Lauren from his second floor balcony. And he also doubled down on the shadowy figure theory. Okay. In a 2012 meeting with the press in an attempt to keep Lauren's story in the headlines, her father said in an interview with the author that he felt if Lauren had never met Corey Rossman, she'd be alive today. Okay, so a little more on the lawsuit. And this is another thing too. They got kind of a lot of scrutiny over the lawsuit. I feel sort of. I feel like people were like, I don't know why they're suing those boys. They had no duty of care. Yeah, I remember rumblings about that. Anyway, they were pressed by their attorneys to file against the last three men to see her alive, Rossman, Beth, and Rosenbaum, to beat the 2-year anniversary deadline, okay? The intent was to force discovery, to hopefully obtain evidence and information the police had failed to obtain during the initial investigation. So it wasn't so much about getting some kind of financial settlement out of these boys. It was more about forcing discovery and like, let's find out as much as we can.
Right.
Okay, so the Spieres pushed to include Wolf, as no one could rule out his involvement. Things became hostile after this. Wolf's parents made public comments about Lauren's drug abuse and Wolf's protective nature over her, stating her drug use cost her her life. Nothing stuck for the civil case. It was also muddied by the fact that the criminal investigation was still ongoing, though had become mostly stagnant. The case against all three men was eventually dismissed. Okay, so here we're going to talk about some theories and tips. That's sort of it as far as the information that we have. Okay, so many theories popped up in the years following her disappearance. Tips that she had been seen in local trap houses came in, one claiming she had been kidnapped by a drug dealer and taken to California, one claiming she had been dumped in the Ohio River. The Spieres even spoke to psychics who claimed to have vision of her being taken to various locations around Bloomington, hidden in a cabin, bound and tied in an RV.
I feel like I remember the cabin one.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some even gave coordinates and home addresses. A tip came in from a couple who bought a house in Indianapolis, and I think they bought it like at auction. It was like sight unseen. And the house was filled with a bunch of trash, and there was a desk that was covered in clippings about Lauren's case. The owner had died, but his son was alive and had been an Indianapolis cop convicted of like child exploitation or something bad. I can't remember exactly. The cop searched his house and found a spot in the closet floor where it looked like fresh boards had been placed, like replaced old ones with new ones. The search ultimately amounted to nothing, though. Corey Hammersley, who was doing time for shooting up an off-campus party, apparently told an inmate that he knew the guys who did that, quote unquote, when a news story came on TV in the prison, a news story about Lauren. He said they had all been taking ecstasy together and that she overdosed and the guys threw her body in the Ohio River. So interesting. Ohio River comes up a couple times. There's some Reddit speculation, and this was, I remember this now. When I read this Reddit thing, I was like, I kind of remember that. And this has been debunked now that the public knows more about the surveillance footage, but there was some Reddit speculation back in the day that she was already deceased when Corey got punched at Smallwood and that he was like carrying her dead body around.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But that's been debunked.
Yeah.
We're pretty sure that's not true. Okay, so the Daniel Messel-Hannah Wilson connection. All right. So
I don't know anything about this.
You were not living here when this happened.
Okay.
This was in 2015.
Okay.
Okay. So Daniel Messel is a local guy. He worked at the Fine Print Shop was the name of the print shop.
Okay.
Yeah. In 2015, he was convicted of killing 22-year-old Hannah Wilson. Her body was discovered in a field in Brown County, 25 miles away, and his cell phone was found next to her body. And then, her hair and blood were found in his vehicle. He like bludgeoned her to death in this field, or at some point bludgeoned her to death and then dumped her body in this field. Okay. What's so coincidental and interesting is that Hannah almost followed the exact same trajectory as Lauren.
Oh, weird.
So she was at the Hilton Garden Inn earlier in the night, which is like literally right next to Smallwood.
Yeah.
And then she headed to Sports from there around 1 a.m., walked to Sports from there before being abducted by Messel. And I put it's interesting because she's following like almost the exact same path and disappeared around the same time of night. So she arrived at Sports and her friends put her in a cab because she was too drunk to be out. Witnesses saw her give her correct address to the cab driver who dropped her at home nearby. Hannah was abducted sometime between going into her apartment and then coming back out. No one's really sure what happened here, but they know Messel was following the cab. So the speculation is that they know she went inside because her roommate heard her come in and close the door. Then she was like making calls on her phone, and they have the records of this. She like called her friend that was still at the bar, and unfortunately Messel had seen what was going on, saw her get in the cab, was following the cab.
Yeah.
And she went back out and he nabbed her.
Ugh.
Yeah. Okay. And this is what is Like, I'm like, oh my gosh. Earlier in the night, Daniel was at Yogi's where we worked.
Oh my God.
Yes. And he had been, remember when we used to do trivia?
Yeah.
So he was a regular trivia player. At first, when I read it, I thought it said he was a regular at Yogi's. And I was like, no. So he was a regular trivia guy.
Okay.
This was like a guy about town. A lot of people knew him, but he also has a very violent history. So it's so
crazy.
weird how you can like know somebody, but
and
like
have
you don't
no
know
idea.
anything about them. Like
Right.
we should be Googling everyone.
Ugh.
Okay. So earlier in the night, he's at Yogi's playing trivia. He was apparently a regular at trivia, and the MC was familiar with him. He has a history of potential attacks on women during 2012, which is the year after Lauren went missing. Okay. 6 women came forward, and this was after he got caught in whatever 2015 for Hannah's killing. 6 women came forward with stories, one resulting in a conviction. One woman had contacted BPD at least 3 times during 2012 to complain about harassment from him and was treated as a hysterical woman with no reason to be calling the police.
God.
He also has a handful of felony and misdemeanor convictions from the 80s and 90s, all pertaining to violence against women. He also like punched his grandmother. This is a man who should have been behind bars already.
Yeah, for sure.
Insane.
God.
The Indy Star reported on his post on sugardaddyforme.com
Ugh.
claiming to be a man seeking IU girls and a sugar baby between 18 and 40 years old.
Ugh.
Somewhere in the book, Cohen, the author, talks about Messel bragging maybe to someone in prison, or somehow there's rumblings of him bragging about how he used to go out trolling that area for drunk girls to attack.
Gross. God. Not even gross. Gross is an understatement.
Yeah. Messel, even though pleading guilty to the 2012 charges, stated he had no memory of the incident. He also proclaimed his innocence in the Hannah Wilson trial even after his conviction. He's never admitted to anything about Lauren. According to a Reddit thread, in 2016, an inmate in Indiana claimed to have information about Lauren. His name is David Hayden, and he began writing letters to the courts and to the attorney of Daniel Messel, stating to have information detrimental to Messel. The author of the Reddit post obtained copies of the letters from the county clerk and posted photos of them, so they definitely exist. The photos are there. The letters are interesting, but also don't make much sense at some points, and of course, they're written by a prison inmate, so you have to take it with a grain of salt. But he's saying that her body is in the Lake Lemon area, which is obviously close to where Hannah was found. He specifically says, yes, it is her. I put her remains there in 2012 to protect a friend who accidentally struck her with vehicle that morning. She was between B-Town and Ellettsville off of Highway 46 until I relocated her remains during a camping trip to Brown County area Memorial Weekend of 2012. He then indicates that she had her sister's ID with her with the name Rebecca, and also indicates the friend is Messel. Now, the car, hitting her with a car is kind of like, I don't know. He also is saying in the letters that it's him. I put her remains there, but he was also incarcerated at the time.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, who knows?
Yeah.
It could just be a cray-cray, you know?
Right.
Anyway, the courts ordered him to stop sending the letters.
Sir, we're not asking you. We're telling you to stop.
Stop. Okay. Prosecutor Ted Adams told the Bloomington Herald-Times in November of 2017 he believes the 2 cases were connected, stating, I have been consistent with my belief regarding Daniel Messel's possible involvement with Lauren Spierer's disappearance. I believe that in my personal opinion, her disappearance is consistent with Daniel Messel's modus operandi. I am not part of the Lauren Spierer investigation. I am sure there are other theories and persons of interest. I additionally readily admit that I have absolute tunnel vision with Daniel Messel due to learning about him during my 16 months of trial preparation for Hannah Wilson's murder. I believe he absolutely could be responsible for Lauren's disappearance. Until recently, the media has never asked my opinion regarding Mrs. Spierer. Others, such as Spierer's parents and I, have explained to them Messel's pattern that led me to develop such an opinion. It is just that, an opinion based simply upon a pattern of conduct over the course of 4 years. And I mean, he goes on a little bit, but that's, I mean, it's basically just him saying, yeah, I think.
You should look into this.
Yeah.
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 Well, what do you think about that?
Honestly, let me go through the next
Okay.
couple and then we'll talk. I do think that one has the most legs.
Okay.
So the Israel Keys, do you remember this?
No.
Okay. So Israel Keys, who was arrested in 2012 and then died by suicide while he was awaiting a trial, is a known serial killer who committed all sorts of crimes from the late 1990s to 2012, where he died by suicide awaiting trial for killing a woman in Alaska. He would often travel, like fly somewhere and then rent a car, and he would drive like vast distances and plan ahead for crimes, making him hard to track. He was known for stashing murder kits so he wouldn't have to travel with weapons or evidence. So he would like plan these years in advance, go bury murder kits, fly to a city, rent a car, drive across the country, dig up murder kits and kill people and stuff. He robbed banks. He did all kinds of stuff.
Dang.
Yeah. Okay. There is some evidence, like burner cell phone pings, that place him driving through Indiana on the day of Lauren's disappearance, and the FBI believes he took her. This came from a true crime podcast called True Crime Bullshit, and they're covering the Israel Keys story extensively. It's not specifically about Lauren Spierer. I went to listen to it because I thought it was going to be an episode about Lauren Spierer. No, it's like a long series on Israel Keys. So I tried to kind of search for that part. I couldn't find it, but I guess they have some compelling theories as to how and why he could have been in Indiana, and they think he took her. I don't think the police or investigators ever really took this that seriously. It does seem very far-fetched, but not entirely implausible. However, he was confirmed to have been in Vermont on June 8th, so 5 days later, 2011, killing a couple in their Vermont home. So that would have been a busy 5 days for him.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. And in the book, Shawn covers this lightly, but also states, I remember him saying this, that Keys was actually not in Indiana at the time of Lauren's disappearance. Maybe not so much saying not, but it's never been proven. There's like some evidence that he flew to Chicago and then, like a few days later was in Vermont. So, I mean, sure, he could have. I just don't think there's any actual proof that he was here. And of course, we can't get information because he's dead. Okay. The FBI raid in Martinsville in 2016. This is the most recent thing to have happened. This was 10 years ago. There was nothing in the book about this. This is just what I remembered, so then I had to Google it. Okay, the FBI was involved on this one, and they ended up raiding a house/barn in Martinsville, which is about 20 miles north of here, looking for her. A man, Justin Wagers, a registered sex offender, who had been arrested for exposing himself, lived there. I guess they took cadaver dogs and dug up the property a little bit. Didn't find anything, but they did tow a white truck from the property.
Crazy.
Nothing came of it, apparently, though.
Yeah.
And that's literally all the information that is out there is that little snippet. The FBI raided it. They towed the truck. That's it. Interesting. Okay. So the author's correspondence with Lauren's friends after deciding to write the book. A little bit of weird behavior from the boyfriend. Some strange behavior after her disappearance. He wrote, "Back in a Facebook relationship. I love you so much, baby. Can't stop thinking about you," which he posted on June 14th. So 10 days after she disappeared, and then promptly took down the next morning. A little weird, but grief is a strange thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
There were also posts later that fall of him. So towards the beginning of the school year, with a new love interest that apparently looked a lot like Lauren, which again, Okay, so for him, we have the conflicting statements about where he watched the game the night of her disappearance, the fact that his whereabouts could not be confirmed during those late hours, so no solid alibi, his quick departure from Bloomington prior to his graduation ceremony, and a day ahead of his scheduled interview with investigators, and then this anonymous letter. And the anonymous letter is what outlined his strange behavior with the posts.
Oh, okay.
It was an anonymous letter written to the investigators or someone saying, Wolf made these weird Facebook posts and now he has a girlfriend that looks like Lauren. All right. The author found the person who wrote the letter, and it was a family member of Lauren's. And they must have wanted to stay anonymous because they were unable to provide any new information, and he didn't say who it was. Okay. Most of Lauren's friends, according to him, don't think Wolf was involved. Okay. The theory comes up again of her overdose. There was a theory that the friends who were visiting, Blesnak and Ferber, had hidden the body in Ferber's car and dumped her body on their way back to Michigan. This seems very far-fetched to me. Like, the visiting friends would just be like, yeah, we'll do it. Absolutely not. No way.
No.
Like, if I was a visiting friend, and we're just saying this for the sake of the scenario, obviously we'd never be involved in something like this, but like, if I was visiting somewhere and some crazy shit was going down and somebody was like very seriously hurt or possibly dying, no way in hell would I be helping anyone do anything. I would be like, I am calling the police. Even if I felt like in that
100.
moment, I just have to get out of here. As soon as I got out of there, I'd be going to the police immediately.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you kidding me?
No, I know.
I don't think the out-of-town friends had anything to do with it.
No, because why? Yeah. I mean, I get that, like, the thought there is like, oh, you get spooked that you're gonna get in trouble. But yeah, like, if you're not connected, you don't live there.
Absolutely not.
No,
Yeah,
like,
you're the friends are the visiting friends are the least connected.
Yeah,
no way. Okay, so Ferber was questioned by the police, but no search was ever done of his vehicle, which they feel like is something that was botched a little bit, which I can understand that. Bo Dietl's team tracked down the car years later after it had been sold multiple times, but neither BPD nor the Spieers wanted to pay to have it swept for DNA evidence. I did find this interesting, and I wonder what something like that would cost. I would think the parents would pay for it.
yeah.
Also, only because, and we'll get into this a little bit later, it does seem like they think she didn't leave that apartment.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, kind of.
You know what I mean?
Ones that they've already decided kind of what happened.
Yeah,
They're
a little
trying to
bit.
prove that as opposed to like,
Right.
yeah.
So I found that interesting. Anyway, okay. Cohen finds plenty of random tips in the investigator files, one claiming a student heard from a friend, unnamed, that Rossman drunkenly admitted at a party that Lauren had overdosed and they had buried her body in the construction site. That's where that theory comes up. Remember earlier when we talked about a construction site nearby where fresh concrete was poured the next day? That's the theory, is that they buried her body in that construction site and then concrete was poured on top the next day.
Yeah.
But it was not corroborated and the student would not name the friend. So, okay. There's also reports of Rossman drunkenly admitting that he never had memory loss and that was just something his lawyer said. He later doubles down on the memory loss when speaking to the author in a phone interview.
Dude.
Yeah. Friends and acquaintances were split on the overdose versus stranger theory. Some claiming the boys were not smart or organized enough to get rid of her body that quickly and successfully. Others leaning into the statistical unlikeliness of it being a stranger. Cohen returns to Bloomington in 2021 to conduct new interviews. This time he's focusing on police, landlords, faculty, and anyone who may remember something. So he speaks with Elliot Lewis, who owned the building that Jay and Corey's townhouses are in. And he recalls having seen Lauren on the stoop of Jay's townhouse days before she disappeared, but not realizing it was her until after her disappearance. He told the police that and also gave them a list of names of people who might have seen her that night, which I assume are like other tenants of his building. None of those people were ever contacted by BPD. And when he questioned BPD about it, they said, well, we have a lot of leads. He also speculated that if Lauren had indeed walked home from the townhouse to Smallwood, it would not have taken long before she would have been in sight of security footage, similarly to how she had been captured with Rossman earlier in the night.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Is like they would have something of her walking back, you'd think.
Yeah. So there's a blind spot right around the townhouse, but if she had started walking towards Smallwood, she could not have made it far because there were security cameras just around the corner from the townhouses on her path to Smallwood. It leaves a very small opening for an abduction. But obviously this Messel guy had been getting away with it.
Yeah.
Again, we don't have like exact time, like we did with her where it's like, there very well may be footage somewhere of Messel doing something. Who knows? The other thing I wonder too is, so this Jay guy says he watched her walk to the corner. Fine. What if she went a different way where there wasn't security footage?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the thing. You think, but there's lots
Who knows?
There's lots of residential streets around there that may not, at that point, wouldn't have them.
Yeah.
Not everybody had Ring cameras back then.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, it is like the downtown area, so it is mostly buildings. But yeah, there's other
Pockets.
there's pockets for sure. And who knows, like, if he even actually watched her? Who knows? They may have just shoved her out the door and nobody knows what way she went. Right. I don't know.
And if she was that drunk, she could have gone the wrong ass direction. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like,
no, exactly. So again, like, the dumpster theory is a big one, and there's lots of opinions about the police kind of botching the initial investigation. So the author writes, several shared their frustrations with the case, starting with the slow speed at which BPD began moving on it. Pursuing standard procedure for a missing persons report, the case didn't even reach a supervisor for 6 or 7 hours. And the supervisor didn't assign it to a detective for another 12 to 16 hours, which hampered efforts like keeping witnesses in town, stopping dumpsters from being taken to the landfill, and collecting evidence before it was destroyed. And then here is where I have, they didn't fully utilize the more experienced FBI or state police, which early on had offered to take over the case. Okay. So remember when I talked earlier about the phone call that Corey Rossman made to his friend from back home? Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, they were like never able to, I guess, figure out who that was, or they just like didn't care enough to look into it. So old Shawn's like, I'm going to find out who it is. So it turns out to be a girl named Brooke Bullins, who was 4 years younger than Rossman, but like from his hometown. And this is also like strange because at this time, he's 21, she's 17. And I guess they had been like friends for a while, which, okay, but like it seems strange that you would have a friend that's 4 years younger than you. Like when you're that age, you know what I mean?
That's a big age gap at
that age. Yeah. According to a friend of Rossman's, he liked girls young and they would party together with another friend named Dana. Dana had passed away from struggles with addiction in 2021, but Rossman and Brooke stayed in touch over the years. So again, just kind of gross behavior. I'm sorry, but like,
sounds
liked girls
like
young.
A scumbag, yeah.
And ew,
yeah, that's gross.
Right, and if they
also,
and if they were 21 and 17 at this point,
yeah,
like I'm sorry, were they 19 and 15 hanging out? Like gross. Yeah, I don't gross. So this is the girl that he called when they were outside of the 10th and College Apartments where they stopped, and Lauren's like falling over and banging her head off the concrete. He called her at 2:09 a.m. when they were still at sports. Then he called her again at 2:55 outside of the 10th and College Apartments after the failed attempt knocking on the door of the girl's apartment. And then he called her again the next day at like 4 p.m. or something and actually talked to her. Oh. And the author's like, we got to figure out what
did he say?
Exactly. Yeah. So the author tracks down her cousin and grandmother and older brother, but none would help him locate or contact her. So he's reaching out to everyone, like the book's about to be published. He's like, let me see if anyone wants to get a final word in. Jesse Wolfe demands $100,000 to talk to him before the book publishing deadline.
Ew.
Yeah, he says, Venmo me $100,000 and I'll talk to you. Otherwise, let this be the last time you ever contact me in this life.
Whoa, what a jerk.
Yeah.
$100,000?
Yeah. Then he gets nasty messages from both of Jesse's parents. The author does. Mike Beth simply says, I'm blocking you.
A more appropriate answer, honestly.
And won't speak with him at all. The other weird thing with Mike Beth, let me just say, because this is the part I don't understand. So Mike Beth walks Lauren over to Jay Rosenbaum's apartment, supposedly. Then there's never any mention of like what he does after that. It's like supposedly they're the last two people to see him, but it's like, if he was still at Jay Rosenbaum's apartment, wouldn't he have some insight as to whether Jay watched her from the door or the balcony? There's never anything, Hollis.
It's really weird.
Are we just supposed to assume that Mike just like dropped her off and then walked back?
Yeah, that's
yet he has accounts of who made the phone calls. He's the one that said Jay made the phone calls.
Yeah, those are details that
that we should know. Yes. Yeah. So like, how long was Mike Beth in the apartment with them? Was he still in the apartment when Lauren supposedly left? That's like never answered.
Yeah, they should definitely have like concrete tabs on these boys in these hours.
Yes.
All for sure.
Absolutely.
They should know where all of them are and the like.
I know.
And this night, the whole night, like, you know, that's insane.
Yeah. So I found that very strange that we never have, the book doesn't give you anything. What I was, other sources, like, there's just no mention of how long Mike Beth was involved after he walked Lauren down there. He obviously was inside for a period of time because he says that Jay made the phone calls. But he doesn't have anything to say about Lauren necessarily leaving or whether or not Jay watched her from the door of the balcony. It's like, it's so strange. Okay. So the Blesnak guy, who was the friend that one of the friends that was in town that was supposedly upstairs asleep, they never really like, even though they call him a key player, he just kind of fades into the background. The author does reach out to him. Oh, David is his first name. His attorney sends an email saying David Blesnak can only recall returning to the apartment and going right upstairs to bed. And this is when they get back from the bars, I guess, like before Lauren is there with Corey or anything. It's been so long, he has no recollection of any specific conversations. He does not recall seeing Lauren at the apartment at that point, which squares with your chronology that she returned there after he had gone upstairs to bed. That's it. That's all we hear from him. He reaches out to Jay Rosenbaum, who initially rebuffs him and is like, no, I don't want to talk to you. So then he reaches out to Corey Rossman, who answers the phone, which is interesting because he's the only one, I think, that never spoke to the private investigators at all. He like literally did his thing with the police and then that was it. Okay. So, and we know his memory loss story has changed over the years a little bit. He says he spoke with everyone that everyone else did, but then admits to never speaking with the Spierer investigators. Shawn presses him about the phone calls to Brooke Bullins, and specifically the one where she answered the next afternoon. He says he doesn't recall. At one point, he says he'd been talking to all the people Shawn was reaching out to, saying Brooke had told him she'd been contacted, but that she was a drug addict and wouldn't talk, and not because he told her not to, but because there was nothing to say. There was nothing significant about those calls. The ones he couldn't remember. He can't remember them, but he knows they weren't significant. Yeah. He says if anything like an OD or heart attack would have happened, they would have called an ambulance. Him, Mike, Jay, they all would have called an ambulance. He brings up Israel Keys, saying that that's who they should be looking into. So then Shawn messages Rosenbaum and says, hey, Corey was cool, hoping to talk to you too. Kind of like being like, he talk. So then Jay called him. He had never before spoken to the press. So at this point, the author brings up the tip he got about Lauren and Rosenbaum kissing. And it's interesting because David Ron had said Rosenbaum had expressed an interest in Lauren. So he's kind of fishing for like, was there a romantic connection? Rosenbaum denies ever kissing Lauren. Like, confidently is like, no, that never happened. He doesn't recall seeing Mike earlier in the night and making the sandwich, as Mike had said in his statement. He also doesn't recall ever saying anything to police or investigators or anyone about an iPod. So doesn't recall that at all. He denies ever having said he watched Lauren from the front door and doubles down on watching her walk down the street from his balcony. He doubles down on the shadowy figure, but says seeing someone approach her or near her would not have been out of the ordinary and not something to be concerned about. People walk home all the time. So he brings up the overdose theory, and Rosenbaum says they brought the cadaver dogs. The dogs would have smelled it if she had died in the apartment. And then the author, like in a little aside, says not necessarily if she hadn't been dead for very long. Yeah. Like cadaver dogs tend to smell more of like decomposition. Yeah. Okay. He claims his innocence over the lie detector test, but the lie detector was outdated tech even in 2011 and was conducted by his attorneys because he refused the one by investigators. Okay, so he's the other one that took a lie detector test. Jesse Wolf said in that Facebook message that he took a lie detector test, but it was not conducted by police or investigators. So I don't think the author is sure if that's true, and if it is true, it was administered by like his attorneys. Same with Jay Rosenbaum. He did take one, but it was administered by his attorneys. He refused the ones that would have been conducted by investigators. Okay. So the dumpster theory. I think this is what the author thinks happened.
Okay.
All right. So he's saying, you know, the cadaver dogs came, they would have smelled it. And he's saying, I think they caught her scent and like the scent just like went cold on the street and someone took her. And he's saying how it wouldn't take much and it would be pretty quick to get her to a dumpster. He says, 90-pound girl, I said. Some have theorized that it could have been as simple as putting her in a dumpster. And he said, Jay goes silent for a minute. We both knew that his townhouse apartment at the corner of 11th and Morton was only steps from the nearest dumpster. The police looked. By the way, I looked in the dumpsters. The police even tracked down the landfill where all the garbage went. They searched that whole landfill. Once again, it's just not a possible theory. Except it is, considering the dumpsters around his property were emptied in the morning hours of June 3rd, 2011, and the landfill wasn't searched for months. So you kind of get the idea that, like, that's what the author probably thinks happened. He brings up Israel Keys. Jay does. So both him and Corey bring up this Israel Keys guy.
So they're probably like, yes, great, a scapegoat.
Right. Said he thought for a minute it was Daniel Messel, but now he's convinced it's Israel Keys. Shawn confronts him about any regret about not walking her home. This is a direct quote. He says, like I said before, never was there a thought in my mind that it was unsafe for her to walk home. With no shoes, no phone, no keys to get in her apartment, for sure. If it was, then yes, I would have walked her home, but there was just no reason. Okay, we're getting there. We're almost to the end. Okay, so Brooke Bullins, he finally finds her.
Oh, the girl he called.
Yes.
Is she the drug addict? That he claimed she was a drug addict?
Yes,
okay.
yes. So there was another girl that they hung out with that died.
Yeah.
And then, but yes, he said this girl's a drug addict, and Shawn found her, and she is.
Okay.
Okay. So he stakes out her house for like 12 hours. He finally like gets her as she's like letting a dog out or something. He walks up to the door and she goes, oh, Jesus, I have no comment. Corey is my friend. I like him. I have no comment. He finally gets her to like sit down with him. She cops to nothing, basically just saying that it wasn't unusual for Corey to call her at all hours and that she doesn't recall the conversation from the next day. Then, this is what's interesting. A little while later, the author gets a phone call from this girl's mother and says to him that Brooke had told her that Corey said to Brooke, the FBI might be listening to their calls, so be careful what you say on the phone, Mom.
Ugh.
And she said she didn't think anything of it at the time.
She didn't know what it was like.
She didn't know what it was about. She didn't know that Lauren was missing. And then she said she never really thought about it again until...
Yeah, she found out what was up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
That is weird.
Yeah.
So that's it. And
Damn. I mean, I don't know.
Dude, I know.
There's like none of those, all of them sound equally plausible to me, honestly.
I know, right? And I mean, so you get the gist that the author thinks definitely the boys had something to do with it. I think he's leaning in on the dumpster theory a little bit.
It's hard for me to believe that these boys, sorry if I'm cutting you off.
No, go ahead.
It's hard for me to believe that these boys within the hours of 4 a.m. to whatever time they were at the pool the next day could have figured out a way to gotten rid of her body and then would just be back to acting normal. I think they would just be like, you know,
right,
a little more shook,
right,
if they had just shoved their friend's body in a dumpster.
No, I think so too. It is truly the definition of a mystery.
Yeah.
It is so crazy that nothing has come out. What I find difficult to believe is, for me, it's like, if those guys did do it, and I'm not saying that they're not capable of it. Unfortunately, I think men are capable of a lot more than we would like to admit.
Agreed.
People in general, not just men, but I think, statistics.
Yeah.
My initial thoughts would be, okay, if they did it, like, they would have found the body. They would have found her. I think the dumpster theory is plausible. maybe they could have gotten quote unquote lucky.
Yeah.
I think the construction site is a little more far-fetched because, again, even though her being small, what, they're going to carried her all the way to the construction site and like somehow buried her in the bottom of this construction site when it's starting to get light out.
Well, and also they said that those construction workers were like, he's picking up his friend at 4:30. The construction workers get there at like 5 a.m.
They may have been there already.
Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. And yeah, I mean, that one's a little more far-fetched to me.
Yeah, same.
I still think though, again, I guess I just don't know what the likelihood of finding a body is if it gets to a landfill.
Well, that's why what I meant earlier is because, like, surely they would have wrapped her body in something.
Right.
Put her in a bag. So,
Right.
like, what do they do when they get to the landfill? Do they just, like, scrape through things? It's not like they're opening up bags.
No, they're not.
You know?
And
like,
and there's a good chance that once the bag goes into the dumpster, it never is touched by a human hand again.
right.
Because the dumpster gets lifted and dumped into the truck gets dumped into the
Yeah.
semi or the transfer station or whatever it is that takes it to the landfill, and then they get probably dumped at the landfill, or they're using big forklifts and stuff to move stuff around. Like,
Right.
it's good chance it never touched another human hand if it went into it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't know. I suppose I don't know enough statistics on that. Like, I don't know enough about that to know, like, if she went into a dumpster, is it basically like poof, gone, you're never going to find her? Because if that's the case, then that becomes a more plausible theory.
Yeah.
You know, because that was always my biggest thing, was not so much that these guys aren't capable of it. I think people are capable of all kinds
Sure.
of things. But it was, if they had done it, A, I would have thought they would have found the body. And B, I would think one of them would crack over time.
Yeah, by this point, yeah, you think one of them
Or
would
even
be.
like right away, like where
yeah.
like one of those out of town guys would have been like, someone give me immunity, I'll talk. You
Right,
know what I
yeah.
mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah.
So
I know, and it's like you said, it's not like people aren't capable of so much, including friends. But I
Yeah.
also find it, I mean, it's just hard for me to believe that this was friends with her from summer camp for years
Yeah.
and years, and would just like, in the course of an hour or two, just be like, oh yeah, we're dumping her body.
No, I
Like,
know.
you know,
And
I'm like, if it was just this Corey guy,
well,
acting alone,
statistically,
I mean-
if it was somebody she knew, statistically, the boyfriend is the biggest suspect.
Yeah.
Statistically, it's the love interest, the boyfriend, not necessarily Corey, but I don't know.
Right.
I mean, his story is just
like, how would he not have been involved? I mean, I guess there is plenty of time in the night
right.
where he could have come back on the scene without anybody knowing.
Exactly. So that's a theory. The other theory I have maybe about the reason why the friends that were there are so hush hush is I do wonder if maybe that Mike Beth guy was there and Jay was there, and maybe Lauren didn't insist on leaving, and maybe Jay was like, get the fuck out of here. You're too messed up. I don't
Yeah.
want you staying here. You need to leave. And maybe they actually made her leave.
and then they felt bad.
Yeah.
I kind of like that. That seems more plausible too. Also, the thing that never made sense to me, and this is like a weird detail, but the cards on the doorknob.
Yeah. It's a little weird.
What?
That almost feels like a made up thing
Yeah.
that you just say to like add.
Make a detail.
Yes.
Yeah.
A made up.
So it's like it's just too weird to make up.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The other thing that they got a lot of criticism for was like, and we talked about this a little bit offline, I feel like, immediately lawyering up. That's what you do.
Yeah. No, for
That
sure.
really that's neither here nor there for me. I mean, I do think the whole like some of them refusing to like meet with the investigators, I can understand that. Like, you have your attorney meet with the investigators. If you don't want to answer a question, your attorney will tell you what to answer and what not to answer. So that part I understand a little bit, how they just also completely like refuse to like cooperate at all.
Yeah.
I can kind of understand that. But like the fact that they lawyered up, it's
No, that's
such
exactly
a
what
high
you do.
profile case. That's exactly, I mean, they would have gotten criticism for not.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't, you're damned if you do,
And
damned
if like
if you
you're a
don't.
kid and your parents are involved, your
Yeah.
parents are 100%
Gonna-
like, do not say anything. We're getting you a lawyer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I never really understood that criticism. Yeah, I don't know. I do feel like for me, and I have kind of thought this for a long time, and I was interested to see if reading this book would change that because there is so much information in it. I really do think it was just an abduction. I really do. I mean, I think it was wrong place, wrong time, the perfect storm.
Yeah.
I think the Daniel Messel thing has a little bit of legs. I think that's something that maybe could be pressed more. I don't, he doesn't seem to be copping to anything. There was that weird rumor or tip about him maybe bragging to people about trolling that area, but he hasn't admitted to anything. He still hasn't admitted to murdering Hannah, he still is claiming his innocence on that. So the Israel Keys thing seems very far-fetched to me.
Yeah, that seems like there's no way in hell that would just work out that perfectly.
I know.
I mean, it's not impossible, obviously, but
right.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stars would have to align pretty perfectly for that to work out.
And then the other thing that I feel like has legs because it's just so inconsistent is the truck. Yeah. Maybe they never got the right truck.
I mean, it's very possible.
Because they said I think it was the Crime Stoppers or whatever that thing I watched. They were never able to get a clear enough picture to get the license plate. So it's like,
who knows?
Who knows if they're 100% sure if they got the right truck.
I know. That's kind of what I was leaning towards too, is like she was walking barefoot, totally incapacitated.
Yeah.
Somebody scooped her right up and took the fuck off.
Yeah. No, I know.
She could be literally
anywhere.
Yeah.
And
because you're right. You'd think at some point you would find the body.
Yeah.
Or even with these boys, I know their stories were a little inconsistent here and there, but you'd think they would find something.
You would
some
think.
Other detail that would be okay, this is going to lead us to what you guys actually did.
Right.
But
I know.
And again, both are plausible.
Yeah, and I also don't, this is another thing that obviously there was no signs of a struggle or DNA. So if she died in that apartment, it sounds like it would have been an overdose or her heart condition. And as much as this may just be me trying to see the good side of people, I really only see someone panicking to hide a body if they're actually responsible for the death.
Yeah.
Because she also didn't buy the drugs from any of these guys.
Right, exactly.
They weren't even with her when she bought the drugs.
Would they need to cover up the death? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think they would be that scared of being blamed, because if she did just keel over and die, you'd be like, well,
I didn't. Yeah. And even if they were worried about drugs that they had them, they're rich white guys. Yeah. They couldn't be that worried about getting in trouble. Yeah. I mean, I just don't see that. And so I don't know.
The Jay and Corey don't really know each other, right? Or do they?
Yeah, they do. Okay. That's how Lauren met Corey was she was introduced to him by Jay because they lived in the same. Yeah.
Gotcha.
So, but I don't know how long they had lived next door to each other. Yeah. So
it seems also you wouldn't. Sounds like Jay was friends with Lauren longer.
Right.
So it seems weird if something happened to her, then immediately Jay and Corey would just be like, oh, yeah, we're covering this up together.
Right.
Since when do they have that strong of an alliance?
Yeah. I don't know. So, and I mean, there's no, and I suppose something could happen where maybe they did do something and they killed her somehow, but there was no, there was no blood. I mean, you know what I mean? They didn't seem to find any evidence that there had been violence.
Yeah. It doesn't sound like there wasn't enough time for anything that nefarious to happen.
It doesn't seem like it. But. No, I know. It truly is a mystery, and I hope to God they find her.
Yeah, I know.
It's time for her parents to have some closure, and the mom talks about that a little bit, about how even though you accept the inevitable, you can't properly grieve.
Yeah, no, for sure. It'll always be living, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah. And that the mom makes a comment when the author says, what do you think happened? And she's like, we're not going to find her until somebody comes forward.
Yeah.
And it's just the way the conversation goes that you can tell she means the people that were there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I think the author thinks that's kind of the route he's going as well. But yeah. And then, of course, the father made that statement about if she hadn't met Corey Rossman, I think she'd still be alive.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
It's so sad. And every year that goes by,
I know.
because, you think about it on and off, but you think about it every time June 3rd comes around every year. It's like, it's another year.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a mystery.
And every time a body is found, they found a body in a rain barrel, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And I remember every time it's like,
June
please
3rd
be Lauren.
I didn't remember the date of it
Oh, you
happening,
didn't?
But like I remember the same with whenever bodies
Yeah.
found, you're like, yeah, I wonder if it's her.
We are now going to be welcoming our friend Rachel to the podcast. She will be giving her eyewitness account of what she saw at the 10th and College apartment complex, leaving a coworker's apartment in the early morning hours of June 3rd. Just for some context, this is where Corey stopped with Lauren in tow, halfway between Smallwood and his townhouse to knock on a friend's door. According to surveillance footage, Lauren was having a lot of trouble staying upright. He even carried her up and down staircases, and at one point, she fell backwards, hitting her head. This is Rachel's first time speaking publicly about what she saw. Rachel, welcome to the pod.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
We are so excited to have you.
Thank you.
And that you've decided to do the only interview you've ever done.
This is true.
Aside from police and investigators, anyway.
Yes.
I don't know that we necessarily consider ourselves the press, but close enough, I suppose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So thank you.
I'm happy you guys got to do the interview.
Okay. So I guess we'll just kind of start, Hollis and I started off talking about sort of just where we were, what we were doing, sort of when the story broke.
Yes.
Because we've already recorded the episode and now you're here giving the interview. We did talk about, how we knew you and that we were all working together at Yogi's at the time. And so, yeah, I would love to hear what you remember from the story coming out and when we sort of found out what happened. And yeah.
From the actual story or okay, so.
Yeah, because obviously you
I did not know. You're right.
Yeah, right.
So it was the next day, which technically I believe was June 3rd. I was at work and everybody was talking about this girl and have you seen? And I said, oh, that's horrible. And I was talking to my sister. I was telling her, that's so scary because just last night I had seen this girl fall back on the steps and hit her head, and I just left her, and it could just be anyone. And at that time, I had no idea that it could possibly be Lauren Spierer.
Right.
And she had said, oh my God, what was she wearing? And I said, all I could see was a white tank top. And she said, oh my gosh, you need to look at the pictures and call the police. And so when I looked at photos, at first, the first photo they had, it was like, well, that could be her, but I'm not sure. And then they'd come out with other photos, and I was like, okay, I need to call the police. And so I called the police anonymously and let them know, and they had me come in and tell them what I had saw.
Gosh. Yeah, it is interesting, too, that we had found out and were talking about it so soon the next day.
Yes. Yeah.
So hubbub was really spreading around. I mean, people were talking.
Oh, absolutely. It was that night. I mean, nighttime had come, so it was around 8:00. I had called the police.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So take us through then what you saw.
Okay, so just to get the idea of the time frame.
Absolutely. Yeah. Start back as early as you would like. Yes.
So Yogi's we could close early at 1 a.m. And that night things were crazy at around. So we didn't actually close the bar until about, I think I might have done the last call a little after 2 a.m. So after we did all our side work and got out of there, I drove a coworker to his apartment. And I went upstairs and we had one beer each, and we were on the balcony and we could just hear arguing and some noises, and I was like, oh, that girl's not having a good time. And we hung out for a little bit, and then I left his apartment, but I got lost inside, and it's kind of like a maze. And so I had to exit out the parking garage, which was not typical for me. I usually go out the other door. And as I was walking out of the parking garage up to 10th Street, I saw a guy standing there and a girl sitting on the steps. And I kind of like smiled as I walked by. And as I passed them, I then heard a smack. And I turned around real quickly, and she had fallen backwards and hit her head. And I turned around quickly, and I said, "Oh, my God, is she okay?"
Yeah.
And he mouthed, "She's drunk." And this is probably my biggest regret out of the whole thing, because if I had just kneeled down by her and just said, "Are you sure you're okay? Can I please take you somewhere?" Anything. But instead, he lifted her up and mouthed, "She's drunk." And I said, "Okay, whatever." I got in my car, and it was about 3:38 by the time I got home. And that's all I had seen. Yes.
And that, I mean, is pretty consistent with, you know, this book has come out and we now have probably the most precise timeline of the events of that night. And I assume that's just from the author compiling all of the information from the security footage that he had access to, that I assume the investigators must have had access to, because he did not have access to police files. Since the investigation is still ongoing, you know, they obviously weren't willing to allow him any access to that, which may be a discretionary thing and may be a legal thing with it going on still. Who knows? And it's interesting because he has that in the book. I remember that detail going around, but I also don't know if that's just because we knew you.
When I did, I kept replaying, and your mind plays tricks on you, because even as I replayed the night, I kept seeing the railings as a red, and the railings to the stairs were actually brown, like kind of like a burnt red, orange. And so your mind does play tricks on you.
Absolutely, yeah. And he has a passage in the book where he's recounting the events of the night, and he says that a woman who had just gotten off work as a bartender, that's you. He's talking about you.
I know.
Yeah. I just want to read here exactly what he says in the book. A woman walking by, a bartender just off work, saw her fall and heard the thud. She asked the young blonde if she was okay, but got no answer. She was concerned, seeing Lauren was sweaty and dazed, but Rossman looked up at the stranger and downplayed the situation. She's drunk, he told her.
It gives me chills.
Yeah.
It is. There were a lot of people talking, and I was so young and vulnerable because I was in my early 20s. And
we were talking about, we weren't much older than Lauren.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I know. I was just so vulnerable. People were coming to ask me questions, and I just assumed they were the family friends, and I was just telling everybody what I saw. And
yeah. Well, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, though. I mean, you know.
You're right.
Yeah, no. I mean, whatever information that is available needs to be known, you know.
Yes.
And to your point about like your regret of like not doing more, but at that time when you see a girl with somebody, you think that person is keeping them safe. Like I would imagine in your mind you were like, oh, she's drunk, she hit her head, but she's with somebody.
That's what I did.
So
think.
she's good. He's gonna take care of her, you know. So like I think you did what anybody would have done.
Yeah. Since then, though, I think that my view has changed, and also having children, I'd be way more quick to know, are you
intervene,
okay?
yeah,
and just get the yes from her.
Yes,
because she never said a word.
Yeah, no, I know.
And then with social media and things, women are really sticking together and helping others out in those situations, and pulling themselves together.
Yeah, we talked about that too, how it really did change the way we thought about how we conduct ourselves walking home and
absolutely
being alone, and we always felt like Bloomington was safe.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure that that's something that people think, you know, you're in the Midwest, even though it's a college town, it just felt safe, and it felt different after that.
You're 100% right. I remember my thought being, it's Bloomington, she's okay.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so now take us through what you're willing to and can about your conversations with the police.
Absolutely.
So you made the call anonymously to start.
Okay. And then they showed up to my work and let my boss know at the time that I was a witness. And so anonymous is not so anonymous.
Right.
And they asked if I could do a sketch. So I went in and did the best I could for a sketch. I really struggled with his mouth, and I got the bone structure, the eyes. He even had these very pointy sideburns that I remember, but I really struggled with the nose and the mouth, and he was smiling, so it was hard to do the sketch, but I did the best I could. And the sketch artist was great, very patient, and then they had me come back in, and they had video surveillance from Kilroy's. And on the video, it's black and white. And on black and white, like video footage, there's still some blurriness. And it's hard
grainy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
And they asked me, do you recognize anyone in here? And I was looking for the guy that I saw. And at first I was like, no. And they said, what about this guy? And they pointed to who they believed was at that time dating Lauren Spierer. I'm not sure if it actually was her boyfriend or not, but I said, no, not him, but this guy resembles more of the guy that I remember seeing. And they said, oh, we don't have identity of that guy. Are you sure it's not this guy? And that part really, really always stuck with me, because I was telling them, no, I think that it's this guy over here. Do you know who he is? And because they didn't have his identity and didn't know who he was, they were pushing me to
confirm that it was actually this other guy.
Exactly.
Okay. So I have a question about this.
Yes.
Okay. So they said it was footage from sports, I assume. Kilroy Sports.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So do we think that this was footage of them leaving the bar?
So it was of them in line, and there's this guy outside of the line pacing, kind of walking back and forth, like.
Interesting.
And I had that's who.
So we think it was them going into sports.
Exactly. Yes, going into sports, and this guy was just kind of hanging around outside the line, and he looked more like who I had seen. And a lot of people really didn't hear me on that, like
because they didn't want to hear you.
Exactly. It wasn't an easy answer. I didn't make the case an easy.
Yeah.
I'm not a detective, but I don't think that's how you're supposed to do it.
I know.
I don't think you're supposed to be like, confirm our theory for us.
Thank you.
You're supposed to just be like, tell us everything you know.
Yes.
And then we put the pieces together.
Yeah.
Like,
when I know that video was never released and the parents never got to see it, and so I hope maybe they're holding on to it just in case.
Yeah, that's wild. And I mean, that's one thing from the book too, is like, from what you've said, how much do the police know hasn't been given to this guy who wrote the book? There seems to be a lot of holes there.
Yeah, definitely. Because in the book, you know, as he's putting the timeline together of the night that she disappeared, and he's saying it very factually, as if she went on her own to the bar with just one guy, who was Corey Rossman, who was not her boyfriend, but the guy that she was hanging out with that night, that they went to sports alone, the two of them. Then there's some inconsistencies about who might have actually been in the bar with them that they knew. And then that they left the bar alone, and that's who she was with, according to the book, is this Corey Rossman. That's 100% who she was with, walking from sports to his townhouse.
Well, and I know that when I've talked to Lauren Spiere's mother, she also confirmed that who I saw that night was Corey. It just doesn't fit right with what I remember seeing and saw, but each picture of somebody looks different. So maybe the picture they showed me is not what I saw him as. And the lighting was dark. The gentleman that I saw his bone structure was a little bit more sharper, stronger cheekbones. He was a smaller guy. So that part always was weird to me.
Just to clarify, the person you think you saw, you don't think it was Corey?
I never did. Again, Lauren's mom and investigators confirmed that it was. It just never sat well with me.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that he wasn't involved. I'm just saying that the guy that I saw did not look like Corey.
The pictures that they showed you of Corey. Yes. Interesting. Yeah.
I know I really didn't make it easier on the investigators at all.
But that's also not your job.
No, it's your job to be honest about what you saw and what they're showing you. Yeah, absolutely. I am so curious, like, who they didn't have an ID on the guy. Then who was in line with Lauren?
Well, in line with Lauren was Corey.
Okay.
In line with Lauren was Corey.
Okay, and then you were saying
Outside
the
of
guy
the
that
line,
you
he was
saw
just-
looked
yes.
more like this guy milling about.
Exactly. And
I
he was near
see.
Lauren, but they were not together.
Okay. And I assume they never confirmed, like, with you, if they ever later got an ID on him.
No, but I assume if they did, they hopefully interviewed him and figured out what the fuck.
Right.
How many times did the police contact you to ask you questions? Like, how many times did you have to go in and, like, relive the night or retell it? Or
It wasn't just the police officer. So to go to the police station, I know I took my mom once, and that was probably the last time that I was getting a little fed up and irritated that I kept having to relive it. I went one time. I wrote down everything that I saw. I went another time to do the sketch. I went another time to tell the story. Tell the story and look at the video. And then the fourth time, I took my mom.
Gotcha.
And then the Spears had hired some investigators at that time, and I interviewed with them, I believe twice, maybe 2 to 3 times. And it's so messed up because even during that time, so I was being followed by PIs.
Oh, gosh.
I know. You go in, you think you're doing something anonymously, and you just want to help. And you're so
Right.
young and vulnerable. And so I'm being followed by PIs. And then at one point, somebody played a sick joke and put a hairbrush with blonde hair and a dirty pair of earrings on my car seat.
No, Rachel.
It ended up being a previous employee at Yogi's.
What? That's horrible.
It was horrible. And at that time, I just started to almost have a breakdown.
Yeah. I'm
you're
so
sweet.
sorry.
And I still tried to help. There was another person that reached out to me a couple years later and had me look at some photos. And I think that he must have been a younger journalist. And I really tried to help. I just wanted to move on.
Yeah, I don't blame you. That can be very traumatic. Because that was going to be my next question is, like, how did you cope with all of that? Because
at first I felt like you're doing the right thing. If this is somebody's child, this is somebody's child. And I figured once I gave the information to the police and the private investigators, that's all I would have to do. And I thought that I could just move on. But then we had people calling. There was a Tony Gatto or something like that calling, a lot of interviewers trying to call Yogi's and ask for me. And it just became very overwhelming.
For sure.
Yes. And then it was also, I think, traumatic because I wanted to give them answers. I thought maybe that missing piece would give them the closure they needed. I hope that, everybody wants her to be found.
Right.
Each year around June 3rd, we all think about it.
Yeah.
Her story is definitely lived on.
Yeah. I know that's one of the most perplexing and frustrating parts about this case is that there is just year after year that missing link doesn't present itself, Well,
and then your mind kind of goes crazy. I think everybody wants their parents to move on and that they have this other child. You have to be a parent for them. And I can't imagine being in their shoes because there's still that hope.
Yeah.
There's still that hope. And I just bring my daughter home.
Yeah. Charlene says in the book that even though they've quote unquote accepted the inevitable, that you can't grieve until there's closure. Not properly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And that's something that I hope never to be able to empathize with or understand. But
I know.
I think about her all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh.
But I'm glad it kind of resurfaces and even after all these years, the story stays the same. It's neat how your memory will hold on to certain things and certain facts. And so thank you for having me.
Absolutely. I do want to ask, do you have your own theories? Have you latched on to any particular theory that's out there? We kind of went through them in the episode and he outlined some of them. I'm sure you remember all of the hubbub around the white truck.
I do that. I remember the white truck. Yes.
Yeah. So there were a lot of theories around that, lots of tips, several different trucks that were kind of followed up on. I don't know if you remember Daniel Messel, who killed Hannah Wilson. And they thought there was maybe some connection there. There was even mention of Israel Keys.
I don't believe either of those ones.
Yeah.
I think I have 2 theories.
Yeah.
I think
lay it on us.
But this is just theories.
Yes. Yes. This is just opinion. Yeah. We have no idea.
I have no idea, and I just hope that they find answers. I think that maybe what happened was an accidental overdose, doing drugs, getting drunk, the hitting on the head, and it was just an accident, and people freaked out and tried to hide it. I think that that's a possibility, and because the trash wasn't checked, I believe for 3 days, something crazy.
No,
so by the time
the landfill was not searched for 10 weeks.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
and luckily out of it, I believe found another body and so another mom was able to get that closure by them going through the landfill, but they did not. And so I think that
they also only searched, I think they said maybe 2 of like 20 acres that was possible.
Thank you.
I mean, there was a lot of criticism of the police department as to like, why was that delayed? Why were the dumpsters not held? Because they were picked up that morning, taken to the transfer station.
Thank you.
And I think it would have been hard to stop them from taking the dumpsters, but there was some criticism of they could have been held at the transfer station, and they weren't. And then the landfill wasn't searched for 10 weeks.
Yeah. So that's one of the most possible. And then the other one is that, and this part just kills me because I hope I am wrong, but the possibility that she was taken and
yeah. I mean, I think that's kind of what we lean towards as unlikely as it is in terms of just statistics alone, based on how the rest of the night went, and she had a boyfriend, and then she's with this other guy, and statistics typically point to, unfortunately, a boyfriend or somebody that but it's hard to think that after all of these years that these guys would just have this lifelong alliance and that somebody wouldn't crack.
Thank you.
And say something.
I got chills when you said that, and I completely agree.
Yeah. They talk a lot in the book about sort of some of the interpersonal relationships, but it's sort of hard to know. And it doesn't seem like any of these guys really knew each other that well.
Thank you.
Yeah. And quite frankly, even Jay, who had known Lauren from camp and things, they didn't grow up in the same area. It just seems like nobody really had that strong of connections and relationships that they would just enter into this essentially lifelong alliance and not.
I'm with you, but I think that also compartmentalizing and this is your future. If that is the way that it went down, that this is your future, and they already know that she's no longer has one. I think that might be strong enough to keep them
quiet.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that has happened before. It's not like there's not precedent for that existing in the world, that kind of behavior. But talking about this again and then kind of processing it, each one are so viable. No option stands out as like better or more likely than the other. I think that's what's so difficult. Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I know we don't have access to the police files, but there must not be a standout theory for them either, because here we are 15 years later.
Exactly.
And it is interesting. I watched a little 20-minute, I can never remember the name of it when I'm on the mic, crime something or other. It just came out a couple of years ago. And they were talking about how it's still very much an active investigation, because somebody had asked, is this a cold case? And they said, no, it's very active. They still receive lots and lots of tips and information, which is good, but it's obviously not leading anywhere.
That's the part that breaks your heart the most, is because a lot of people haven't given up. Like you said, there's multiple people that are still calling in tips, and I know the parents have never given up.
Yeah. I know. So, yeah, I mean, we said this before and how it felt kind of silly to say, but if anyone is listening to this and knows anything, please, anything that may not seem important could be important.
Out of curiosity, what were your like conversations or impressions of her parents like at the time?
Oh, it was so devastating because you have all these people that are saying, you know, your daughter's not coming back. You need to move on. You have another daughter. And I support Charlene 100%. How can you move on without that closure? My daughter could be somewhere. I need to find her. I need to bring her home, dead or alive. So I think it was incredibly hard for me to be around both. I think that I identify with the mother so much more. And I saw my mom. Because it could so easily have happened to any of us.
Well, good on you for stepping forward and, you know, telling what you saw, because that would have been easy not to, because it would have been a scary thing to do. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here and
Thank
telling
you for
us.
having me. I appreciate you ladies. Yeah. I think that the story needs to live on. I think that the more we talk about it, we need to keep it alive.
I think so too. That was part of the reason, you know, for doing the episode. Because of obviously we live here and we lived it in real time, so that made sense. But also, I cannot believe that it's been 15 years.
Oh, I know. It's incredible. And you saying that and looking, I get chills again.
No, I know. I mean, it's hard to know how to end these conversations, but well, yes, thank you for being here. And it's been nice to talk to you and catch up. And thanks for telling your story.
Ditto.
So that concludes the story. All we can do at this point is hope that there's answers someday.
Yeah.
So
keep Lauren in our thoughts and her family.
Yeah. Keep the story alive and keep it in the headlines as much as possible, and you know, hope for the best. I hope that they can have some closure someday.
Yeah. Check out Shawn Cohen's book, College
Girl
Missing, if you're interested.
Let me go ahead and College Girl Missing, the true story of how a young woman disappeared in plain sight. Author Shawn Cohen. You know, if you're somebody who's followed the case and you've been down every Reddit rabbit hole and you think you know everything, well, I mean, I just told you a lot of it, but read the book. I had 18 pages of notes, but it's a, you know, it's a 215 page book. So lots of bits in here and definitely lots of information that was never released to the public. So highly recommend. Give it a read. And I mean, maybe someday there'll be a documentary. I'm kind of surprised there hasn't been yet. There's been little snippets here and there, but
I wonder if the parents have to give
maybe. And they have stopped speaking out about it publicly. They don't talk about it anymore. Anyway, if you want the full story, give it a read. But all right, I think that's all we've got today. It's been a few days now since we recorded, and we have had the chance to consume the story in its entirety and reflect a little bit. And there's a few things we want to address, just a few holes in the information from the book, as well as some expanded thoughts on certain details. So we're hopping back on to discuss. With this case being top of mind for us, I wouldn't be surprised if we have more thoughts and theories that we discuss in future episodes. This has been a lot of information to digest, and you know we love a circle back here at She's in the Weeds. So thank you for listening and sticking with us through our first true crime episode, and here are some final thoughts. For now, anyway. Okay, so we've had a little time to reflect. We recorded the Lauren Spierer episode, and you know, you're just like thinking about it, and some things have come up, so we wanted to just pop back on after sort of listening and thinking about it. There's a couple of I feel like sort of glaring holes from the information that we had in the book that I want to touch on, and then just like a little bit of expanded thoughts on some of the other things we talked about. So let me pull up my notes here. Shawn talked about in the book the two accounts of the boyfriend Jesse Wolf's whereabouts the night that she disappeared, and how there's kind of two different stories. And I'm guessing that, you know, we have to keep in mind that he didn't have access to the police files, right? So it's like an ongoing investigation. Obviously, they weren't able to, even if they wanted to cooperate, you probably can't at this point. So it's possible that there's answers to some of these in the police files, and maybe they know this stuff and they obviously like don't think it's important or it hasn't panned out to anything. But just based on the book, he gives these two accounts of Jesse's whereabouts on the night she disappeared. I want to know, which story does his account align with? I assume we don't know what he said since he didn't speak with the Spierer investigators and we have no access to the full police records. Also, what about the roommate that he was supposedly with, according to his frat brothers? Because if you remember, the frat brothers said that he was watching the game with a bunch of them at their house, and that then he went home, sat around with his roommate, whose last name is Rifkin. I don't remember his first name. They talked about the game, talked about the night, and then he went to bed. The second account was of his other roommate, Aaron Greenberg, who told investigators or police or whoever that he and Jesse had watched the game together at home and that the other roommate, Rifkin, wasn't even there. So those are the two accounts we have in the book, and I want to know, like, what did Jesse say he was doing? We obviously don't have that information.
Right, because he only spoke to the cops that one time.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm really curious to know what was his account, and then where is Rifkin's account? He must not have spoken to investigators or Shawn or anyone at any point, because what does he say?
Yeah.
Is he like, yeah, we're together? Or
corroborate? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's so, and you know, maybe Shawn is just assuming that we know there's going to be holes because he doesn't have access to the police files, but I kind of wish he would have said that in the book. Like, these are the two accounts I had access to. Because he never says, like, we don't know what Rifkin said. We don't know what Jesse said. Maybe you're just supposed to assume, but I don't know.
Are we just supposed to assume that the cops just, like, ruled him out as a suspect pretty quickly
I
because
guess.
she was with these other boys?
I
most of the night?
suppose so.
Yeah.
But if I'm being totally honest, you know, I know there are inconsistencies in Jay's story and Mike's story. But those inconsistencies are less alarming to me than two totally different stories of the boyfriend's whereabouts and, like, his supposed alibi.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think that would be pursued just as heavily as all the other possibilities at first. I mean, if it because it is such a mystery and there are so many holes, you think that they would, no one would be ruled out until everybody was solidified in where they were and what they were doing.
Yeah, for this group of people to be saying he was with us, and this other guy to be saying no, he was with me, and that guy wasn't even there.
It's a pretty big inconsistency.
That's a pretty
yeah.
The more I thought about that, the more I started to spiral.
Yeah.
And I know it's just one of those things where, like, we clearly the cops don't think he's a suspect. So there must be more information in the police files that we just don't have.
Yeah.
But that, coupled with the fact that he skipped out on his graduation ceremony and the meeting that he had with the Spierer investigators and just hightailed it home with 6 months left on his lease and, like, left all of his crap behind. That's
But that could be, I mean, you could, I don't think you can rule out the behavior of people after a traumatic event.
No,
but I also don't
but
think it, like, proves anything necessarily.
No, I'm not saying it proves anything. I'm just saying those two things coupled together with those two stories being so different, the more I thought about it, was like,
yeah, it's funny.
Those inconsistencies in those two stories to me are more concerning than the inconsistencies in Jay and Mike's story.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a big hole.
Yeah.
That would need to be satisfied by police officers, you'd think.
You would think.
but I don't know.
Who
It
knows?
doesn't sound like
I know.
Didn't sound like they were doing their jobs up to typical.
Yeah, and I mean, I just don't know enough about all of that to know. Yeah, who knows? But yeah.
I know. I really wish we could, like, find out what the cops knew.
Yeah. I want to know what Jesse said. Did Jesse say he was with the frat brothers and it's just this Aaron guy who's, like, lying for some reason? One of them is lying. See, to me,
or misremembering.
Well, but see, that's what I was going to say. With Jay and Mike, that seems more like misremembering to me. Like, oh, like, he forgot that Mike was over there earlier in the night, or they're misremembering who made the phone calls, or maybe they weren't even really paying attention to who made the phone calls. Like, but for somebody to say, no, he was here with us, and then someone else to say, no, he was here with me and that guy wasn't even here, to me, that's much more of somebody is lying for some reason, as opposed to you just forgot who you were with.
Yeah.
And where you were. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I feel like those guys would have way less of any reason to remember, because they were just hanging out. That was just like a random regular Friday night to them.
Right.
Like nothing unusual happened except for learning later that this happened to somebody else.
Yeah.
You know, so maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
It sounds more to me like, one of those guys is just kind of a bonehead and just didn't remember or misremembered.
Yeah,
or
could be. That just seems more, it's more of a significant, I think, inconsistency than the other guys. I would really like to know what Jesse said.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate because we probably never will.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was thinking about that a lot. And then the other thing I find really strange, which again, I'm sure it has something to do with the police files and we just don't have the information. But in the beginning of the book, Shawn talks a lot about like sort of the key players and like the people that were in the townhouse the night she disappeared. And Jay, of course, and Corey and Mike, Beth come up a lot as like the three main players. And then they include that David Blesnak in that sort of group of key players, of people who are in the townhouse. And then he sort of gets ruled out pretty quickly as having been asleep by the time Lauren and Corey got back to the townhouses. And remember, he was the visiting friend. But there was also that Alex Ferber, who was a visiting friend. And he's almost never mentioned at all until later on when they're talking about how the police did question him but never searched his car because he was the only one with a car. I just find that odd that David Blesnak is mentioned like quite a few times in the beginning, and then the author even reaches out to him at the end when he's like kind of reaching back out to all the guys, but it's just like nobody cares that this Alex Ferber guy was also in the townhouse. It just seems strange that there's almost no emphasis. It's like, what makes David Blesnak more significant than Alex Ferber when they essentially played the same role?
Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know.
I know. That's a weird one too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. Then also, and of course, like, I mean, read the book if you know, I mean, there's so much information in the book, but there was a little bit in the beginning right after she goes missing and they're kind of looking for her the next morning. He's talking about how all the guys, Corey, Jay, Mike, Alex, and David, like, go back to the townhouse and are like discussing the night's events. I would love to know what was discussed.
Oh,
I mean, it's just like, and so that makes me curious too, because he's talking about how they all go back to the townhouse and they're like discussing the night's events and everything. And yet, again, no one's talking about this Alex Ferber guy really at all. And I think that too might have been one of the criticisms kind of what was happening with the police department and how they took so long to kind of assign the case and like get moving on the investigation, is that like these guys were gone already. Mm-hmm. You know, like they'd left town. And I think that was part of the criticism, is like they could have held witnesses back and, you know, held the dumpster back and that kind of thing.
Protocol type things that you feel like got missed. Like, yeah, like you absolutely do these things.
Right.
When somebody's missing and you're investigating a potential murder.
Right. And it's like, I understand that Alex, you know, and obviously this David guy, because I keep talking about it, we're already asleep, but it's not like they weren't around and awake, like, and around her earlier in the night when she first came to the townhouses.
Yeah, because that's the thing in investigations where you're like, any little detail.
Yes.
Any little thing could be helpful. So, like, you get everything.
Right.
You don't let anything pass.
Exactly.
Because, you know, they could have overheard one sentence that could, like, lead them to something else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Okay. And then I was just sort of thinking again about, you know, we talked about this a little bit about how if you're going to dispose of a body and like cover a whole thing up, you would think it would be because you were responsible for it. You know, we talked about that, how like if she had just overdosed or there had been a heart situation, how we don't think they would have been like, yeah, we're just going to like be lifelong alliances, cover this up and like take that risk when we didn't do it, you know?
Yeah. Especially because I can't remember if we talked about this or if I was talking about it with my boyfriend, that like also the aspect that these are privileged white boys.
We talked about it a little bit, yeah.
Who would probably have the opportunity to
get out of it.
Right.
And we talked about how they weren't necessarily, and I guess maybe, because I thought about this too, because we were talking about how they're not even the ones that gave her the drugs. You know, she had purchased them on her own. Maybe they did give her drugs and they didn't necessarily know that she had already. So sure. But even that alone, there's no way to prove that.
Yeah.
You know, they could, even if they were worried about supplying her with drugs. Also, I just don't think that kids that age are worried about like people being litigious. They weren't thinking like, oh, we're going to get sued for like giving her drugs. And she, you know, I don't think that, I just don't think 21-year-old guys are like thinking about that kind of stuff.
It does feel a little drastic for,
yeah. The only thing I could think when I was thinking about it later is if something happened and Corey was concerned, it was because she had like hit her head and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought about that, but then the more I thought about that, I'm like, well, if that would have been the case, then he would have had to have been up and like in the mix. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because there's absolutely no way she would have died of like a head injury and those two guys who weren't with her and didn't see her fall would just decide on their own that they're going to cover it up for this other guy who's asleep. You know?
Yeah.
I wouldn't think so. And if he did happen to be awake and he was like, oh my gosh, it's from the head injury, like we have to do something, they would never lie for him and say that he was asleep. So that didn't really make sense to me either. I was just like going through all of the possible scenarios,
and, like,
you know?
None of that really makes sense.
Not really. I know.
I mean, the only one that truly makes sense and there is no other, there's no big question marks, is that she got snatched up.
No, I know.
And then, but that's also the most unsatisfying because it's the heart. We have zero leads then in that case.
I know. And it is I think it's the least likely statistically, which people have a hard time with too.
Exactly,
yeah. I know.
And that was the thing going back to Jessie, given the statistic that like most girls who disappear or are injured
it is the boyfriend.
You'd think there would have been more emphasis.
Which is part
him.
of the reason why I was spiraling about the differences in those stories. Because I'm like, okay, statistically, he's the guy.
Yeah.
And then when you're thinking about the differences in the stories, those two stories being different in the way that they're different is more alarming to me than the way that stories of the other guys are different. And it's just, I think, one of those things where we just don't have all the information.
Yeah.
I don't know. And then I was thinking about, you know, if something did happen in those townhouses, whether they were responsible for it or not, and they did decide, okay, we got to do something, we're going to get in trouble. The only theory that really makes sense to me is the dumpster.
Yeah.
There's just no way they put her in that construction site an hour before daybreak.
No.
There's no way.
And there's no way that construction workers would... You look before you put concrete in something. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I know. I agree.
And they just wouldn't have had enough time.
No, they would have been caught on CCTV somewhere.
Yeah,
The only thing that makes sense to me, if she did die in that townhouse, is the dumpster. And they just got lucky.
Yeah, because, how else would they have gotten,
Otherwise, we would have found her. I do think it's interesting, the private investigator that was, like, the head investigator, Mike Ciravello, I think his name was, in that 20-minute little documentary thing I watched, he did say he thinks she was taken. He said... That's a big secret to keep for that long.
Yes.
And he's like, I think somebody would have talked. And
for sure. That's another thing. That's, I think, the biggest disproving point to the boys thing is that, like, one of them would have.
You would think. And there's no reason. Like, I was thinking about this, too, because we talked about how Jay had known her from camp and all of this stuff. But then I was thinking about that more because those friends that were visiting, they said they were visiting from his hometown in Michigan. So they didn't live near each other. So I was thinking about that a little bit. Like I went to sleepaway camp and like I had friends from camp that I saw at camp, but that's different than friends you grow up with.
Yeah, that's what I was picturing.
Yeah,
it's
no.
Like they both lived in New York and they went to camp and spent.
No,
Okay.
it sounds like he's from Michigan.
Okay.
Now I could have probably fact checked that a little more thoroughly, but those friends that were visiting from Michigan. Supposedly where they're from.
That does make a big difference.
Yeah, because I was thinking about that with the theory of where I was talking about maybe the reason they were so hush hush is because they made her leave.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about that a lot, and I was like, man, if you were like friends with somebody, but maybe they weren't as close as we thought, and maybe they were worried. Because here's the thing, too. That whole friend group knew that her and Jesse were kind of like fighting a little bit over the interest from this Corey guy, and Jay had kind of orchestrated the introduction between the two of them. I wonder if he was worried about the next morning Jesse finding out that she'd stayed there.
Yeah, and then being like,
you got to get out of here.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, social aspects to those scenarios that could play a significant role in like their choices that night.
Exactly. Because I went back and forth about, she didn't have shoes, she didn't have a phone, she didn't have keys to get into her apartment, which we assume they knew, but at the same time, who knows? There could be total boneheads who thought she could get into her apartment. I don't know, or thought maybe one of her roommates was there or whatever. I went back and forth a lot about, I was trying to like put us in it, like with our friends and stuff. And I'm like, there's no way we would have let somebody walk home without shoes or keys or a phone.
Absolutely
now,
not.
If
girls for sure,
but probably not even a guy
and that was,
shoeless and phoneless.
That was a big thing with me, that the fact that they had been friends for so long. I was like, there's no way if you grew up with somebody and you were that tight and you stayed friends and you were still hanging out in college that, when I think of our guy friends, they would never let me walk home shoeless.
Yeah, no.
You know what I mean? Even when times were different.
Right.
Like,
No, I know. That's what.
But that does make a little bit more sense of like they weren't that
good
close
of friends. And they're, if he was worried that your boyfriend is going to be, I don't want to be responsible for, you staying here and rumors of like cheating or like all of that. And so they made her leave, and then it happened, and then they were like, oh shit, like,
yeah.
Because I could see staying tight-lipped about that for 15 years. Because you're not really covering for anyone. There's no big secret.
Other than like, you don't want everyone to be like,
think you're
what
an
the
asshole.
hell?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I don't know.
And that's the thing about stories like this that we'll never, ever know is like, what exactly were all of the relationships like? What were the little conversations? What were the, hour to hour things happening in a night like that where you are partying a lot and there's a lot of different dynamics and you're making all kinds of decisions.
Right.
Like those are the things you're never going to, the details you're never going to tell police or investigators.
Exactly. That's really
so you haven't been thinking about it
I haven't been thinking about it at all. And I was really just kind of, I need the information on Jesse, but I guess we're just going to have to sit tight.
Well, maybe you should DM him. Find him on
Facebook message him. Yeah. Excuse me.
We have just read the book of your favorite private investigator.
I need to know.
I know you didn't want to talk to him or anybody else, but I was wondering if you would answer a few questions of mine.
She's in the weeds reporting live from Facebook Messenger.
Yeah. I just really need answered before I can sleep at night.
That's right. So anyway, we'd love to know, what are your theories? What do you think?
Yeah.
We're actually just waiting now. Our friend is getting ready to head over here and do the interview for what she saw that night. So I'm thinking probably for the flow of the episode, we'll just maybe put that at the end too. So we'll see. But I'm interested to see what all the listeners think. And yeah.
Drop us your thoughts.
Yeah. let us know, and let's get some tips in. Maybe we can get some tips in.
Let's solve this thing.
No, seriously. Sleuths. Let's solve it.
I will say, when I've been walking my dog, I'm looking. I'm like, man, wouldn't it be? At some point, I feel like it could happen.
I know.
And it's
No,
just
I know.
Like, what if it's just somewhere so obvious? Like, she could literally be anywhere.
No, I know.
You start to like spiral a little bit, being like,
oh,
what if-
are you think I'm not looking at every white truck?
Oh yeah.
Because that one bothers me still too.
That so many people. That was
500 tips and 3 or 4 different leads on the truck, and all seemingly go nowhere, but also conflicting reports about supposedly the same truck, but one outlet saying it was this and another saying it was this. I'm sorry, what? That's the
whole case.
The whole thing is just crazy. Okay, well, that's it. And let us know what you think. And I don't know how to end it, so we're ending it.
Justice for Lauren.
Justice for Lauren. I hope there's closure for her family. I mean, that's all we can really hope for at this point.
Yep.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
3, 2, 1.